Greetings, it is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It's time to continue talking about anime series from the winter 2016 season. I'm going to give a review of them, and then an episode after this one, I'm going to talk about using them in your BESM games, how to use their worlds and adapt them to your games. So let's start diving in here. I've got 3 more series to talk to you about. Phantasy Star Online 2, Prince of Stride Alternative, and Mahou Girls Precure. But let's start with that one, Mahou Girls Precure, or Mahou Girls Precure. It's a Precure anime. They are the quintessential magical girl anime. If you ever are talking about a magical girl anime, bring up Precure. Again, since I watch a metric buttload of anime, this is actually one that's been included on my list. I kind of rate this one maybe a 2 or a 3. It's hard to tell the difference which one I really would put it at. It's not great because it is also sort of like, it is definitely for a younger audience. That's a good way of saying it. But it's not a bad anime either, and magical girl animes aren't bad in general. It's like with any genre, you can have good ones and bad ones. So anyway, let's talk about it. So our main character is Mirai. She's a 13-year-old gay girl, energetic. She likes investigating things. She goes off to investigate this fallen object with her little stuffed doll, little stuffed bear, Mahou. Now, when she gets there, she sort of runs into Rika, a young musician who's been looking for the Emerald Linkle Stone. She kind of is investigating this. They kind of run into a different Linkle Stone there. Mahou comes to life. Mirai learns that she has magical abilities. The two of them then are attacked by a minion of Dokurubi. And anyway, so the two of them transform into legendary magicians Precure. So the two of them have basically gained all these magical powers. They fight off the minion, defeat him, and then it ends up Mirai goes back with Rika to the magical world because she's from a magical world. So there's 2 worlds, a mundane world, a magical world, where she learns to use some of her abilities, learns that she does have magic, even though she's from the sort of human world, the normal world. And they go on adventures collecting more Linkle Stones, looking for the Linkle Emerald. These series go on for about 50 episodes. All the Precure series do. They go yearly. And this one is no different. It's been going for 2 seasons. They start around February, go to February. They start about midway into the winter season and go to the next one, effectively. This one, again, is no different. It's going on now. It's still going. Anyway, so the genres, I would say, is, of course, is a magical girl anime. I said, it's the quintessential one. It's the best example if you want to use a magical girl. They transform. They have teams. They go fight monsters. They defeat monsters. They have some kind of ultimate goal. There's usually some kind of theme to this one. This one is magicians, is the theme. Each one seems to have a different theme to it. So another one I would add for a word here is, of course, it's a fantasy. The magical world is a great example of sort of a fantasy world. It has things like mermaids, pegasi, magical creatures. It's got, like, everybody uses magic for interesting things. So it does have this fantasy feel when they go into the magical world. And it's also then a magic anime. It's revolving around magic and spellcasting. And they have their own little spells. They technically are magicians when they transform into magical girls, even though it sort of doesn't work the same way you'd think as traditional spellcasters were, but whatever, it works out in the end. So next one I want to talk about is Prince of Stride Alternative. This one is all about this sort of extreme sport called Stride that's been developed in like recent years. And it's this game where 5 people do this sort of relay race across towns where they're also sort of got this person called a relationer that talks to them on radios and helps them to navigate them. They run through cities. So it's a very, actually, I call it a parkour anime, if you want to think of it that way. That this game, Stride, has this really good feeling of parkour to it because they run across the cities. Granted, there are times that there's running, because it is a relay race, so to say, with 5 people. Anyway, so we center around Honan Academy, where these 2 new students, Takeru and Nana, are trying to basically rebuild the school's Stride Club. It's sort of the club has fallen apart. They don't do anything anymore, and so the entire quest of it is to rebuild the club, which they're pretty successful in doing, and then start getting back into the competitions. Nana eventually becomes the relationer and team manager, and the team eventually coming back together is aiming to compete in the end of summer. It's this competition called the end of summer, which is the major stride competition in that area. So their goal is to compete and be successful at that, and that's what the anime is all about. So this is a sports anime. That's a good way of saying it, because it is about this sport that they've come up with, that they've invented. So it definitely has that sports anime feel that it's all about the sport. Now it is sort of dramatic too, so this is kind of like a light drama, because all the players have their own little quirks and dramas about them that they try to resolve. Takeru has one. The other newer student has some pretty big problems because he had competed in Stride in the past and didn't want to do it again, sort of thing, and so he's brought back into it, and so it does have this dramatic feel to it. And of course it is a school/school club anime, because it does revolve around the school and a school club, which, yes, the school club is all about Stride, but they do focus on that it's this club there too. You do have sports animes where they don't focus on the club and they don't focus on the school. This one does. So I rate this one, I give it again another 2/3. This one was pretty good. It's not great. I've seen better sports animes, what I'm going to say to this one. But it wasn't a bad one also. If you want to know about some sports animes, I do have recommendations, definitely. So just, leave me know in the comments below if you're really interested in those. And I can come up with a recommendation list of some pretty good ones. Princess 9 for one. Anyway, let's move on to the last one, which is Phantasy Star Online 2. Now, this is set in the year 2027 in the sort of that version of Tokyo in the future, and it revolves around this online game, Phantasy Star Online 2. It's a free kind of game where anybody can get into it, and it's very popular. And so it revolves around Sega Academy. This academy is where our main character, Itsuki, goes. Now, he is this really great student, he gets great grades, he helps out a lot, but he doesn't get into games like that. So he's actually eventually asked by the student council, and specifically Rina, the student council president, to join the student council as the student council vice president. Now, Rina is this famous student in the school because she represents great perfection, that she's one of the best students they've had in quite a long time. So, as the vice president, he is asked to, as a social experiment, play Phantasy Star Online 2 and see how it reflects the work and how it affects the students. So it's going to see how it affects their schoolwork and their home life and stuff like that. So they're studying the effects of it to see how they treat it in the school setting. Itsuki, he goes into the game, he's a newbie, he gets some help from someone who's basically being his sort of tutorial person. He goes through all these adventures, meets some people, he's playing the game, and it sort of then mashes together him doing stuff in real life and balancing it with the game and sort of becoming to enjoy the game and getting better at it. And the story revolves around him making friends in the game, but it also revolves around this sort of overarching plot with the game isn't everything that it seems like, and there's this sort of plot behind the game that's very interesting, and we learn more about it. And I do feel like the end plot in this anime rushes at the end, I'm going to say. The end does feel rushed, like they needed to have this be more like a 26 episode season rather than what it was, because it's sort of like the major plot comes in the last 4 episodes and they rush through it, and especially the last episodes feels like it should have maybe been pushed back more. It isn't perfect, is a good way of saying it, but this is a pretty good anime still nonetheless. I gave it a 4 in my opinion, because it was still very good and very enjoyable. So the genres this one is, of course, it's a sci-fi one. It's in a futuristic society with this full immersion VR video game where people are getting involved in. We have a basically sci-fi world. It's a very simple one, but it is. Now, it's also a online game world. This is a sort of new genre that's come out recently where people go into online games, whether they're trapped in it or just in it. I've talked about some other ones before. But of course, there is a good amount of animes that represent this. And I would call this one also then a fantasy. Hence the name, it sort of fits with it even though it starts with a PH. It really is very fanciful. When they get into some of the abilities the characters have and stuff like that, it does have this sort of fantasy feel to it that it's a sci-fi fantasy in a way. especially when you get to the back half of the season, that's when it really comes in and starts to hit you a lot with that sort of fantasy feel to it. So that's it for today. These are the 3 anime I wanted to talk about today. I've given some reviews on them. In the next episode, which we'll post after this one, I'll talk about using them in your BESM game. If you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave it in the comments below. Please like this video. It's a great way of showing your support for the channel and the Empire. Please subscribe if you already haven't. We're always looking for more members, more citizens. And please share this video if you know anybody that would learn anything from it or would just enjoy watching it. And until the next time, I bid you farewell.